when you're very heavy and overdeveloped, your joints can't take that kind of a strain. Jumping off a stage of an auditorium is a very long jump. Dave Palumbo here with an RX Muscle rant. Today's topic, being a bodybuilder. Some of the responsibilities that come with being a bodybuilder. And some of the best words of advice that I ever received came from my father, who had no instincts and no real love of bodybuilding, especially when I first started. But he told me this when I got into sports as a kid. Because I used to try to do everything. And I was always doing daredevil stuff and getting hurt doing stupid stuff. And he said, listen, if you want to be an elite level athlete, if you want to be a great athlete, you could only do one thing, your sport. He said, because if you do other stuff, you're risking injury. He says, and it's going to take away from how great and how far you can go in your sport. You want to just be a casual, guy who plays a whole bunch of different sports? He goes, that's fine. He's like, but if you want to be the best, that's all you can do. One thing. He said, because you will get hurt and it will derail you from your goals. And you know what? He was 100% right. And it really sunk in the most when I was into bodybuilding. And I saw a really good friend of mine, Sam Abdul. He won the Eastern USA Bodybuilding Championships. He looked like a mini Nasser El Somebody, this guy. Maybe some of you guys know who he is. And I thought he was going to go on to be a great pro and do some real damage in the IFBB. And you know what? He won the show, he went on vacation, and he was playing volleyball. And he tore his rotator cuff. And that was the end of his bodybuilding career. Never was the same again. Couldn't train heavy. That was it. And when that happened to him, it really, at that point, I already had realized that I have to just focus on one thing because, it really cemented how right my father was. Because when you're a bodybuilder, you're very developed in one direction, okay? It's forward and backwards, okay? We don't develop strength side to side laterally. So if you try to play basketball or volleyball or anything that requires lateral movement, you're gonna tear something, okay? And the bigger you are, probably the more likely you are to tear something in your knees. Because the knees are not, your quads are so overdeveloped and hamstrings, glutes, that they're just not meant to go laterally. And in a lot of sports, that's the case. Skiing, okay? Skateboarding, skating, rollerblade. You can't do any of this stuff because you will get hurt. And a lot of you out there are saying, oh, yep, I remember when I got hurt doing this. You can't ride a motorcycle, okay? Because if you fall off the motorcycle, you're going to get road rash and you're probably going to tear muscles, okay? You can't, even riding a regular bicycle is dangerous when you're that big because your center of gravity is off. When I was that big, I couldn't even ride. I got on a bicycle. I felt like I never rode a bicycle before because my balance was all weird because I was so overdeveloped and so heavy. I didn't even realize how heavy I was, until I got on a bike and I realized the bicycle wasn't balancing my body correctly. So the reason I bring this up is because GoodVito, if you guys follow him on Instagram, he is a great young talent. Chris Aceto works with him. I'm super excited to see him make his pro debut at some point. I know he was due to make it in 6 weeks from now. I don't know if that's going to happen now. He was doing a guest posing this past week, and I'll see if I can find the footage. And he jumped off the stage to go in the audience and, entertain them. But what I guess he didn't realize is probably, when you're a kid, you can jump. My son jumps off, the roof of the house and he doesn't get hurt. I walk off one step of my staircase in my house and I feel like my knees are going to explode. So when you're very heavy and overdeveloped, your joints can't take that kind of a strain. Jumping off a stage of an auditorium is a very long jump. As a matter of fact, I stepped down when I was guest posing. I didn't jump off one. I stepped down to go into the crowd once, and I didn't realize how far down it was. And I probably only dropped about 3 feet, okay, which is not a lot. And I felt like my knees were going to explode. I thought I really hurt myself. I felt a jarring in my joints when I hit the ground. This guy jumped off the stage into the crowd, and onto the ground. And from what I understand, thank God, from what Chris tells me, they're saying that he didn't tear any ligaments, that he might have just stretched them. The problem is when you stretch ligaments, you have instability in the joint. So hopefully, you know, if he rests it and ices it, you know, and follows the directions of the doctor, he'll be able to still compete in 6 or 8 weeks. I don't know I don't think there's been a decision made yet, but the take-home message here is not that GoodVito was doing anything, you know, stupid. He wasn't thinking. And when you're that big, you have to think at all times. Everything you do has to be measured. Look, I've seen people slip on the stage because of oil and really hurt themselves. When I did a split, I used to do a split in this guest posing routine I was doing back in 2002. 2002 to 3, I did 25 guest posings, and maybe more. I was at least 25 guest posings in 02 and 03. It's crazy. It was almost, I don't even know how I coordinated it, but it just worked out. I was traveling every weekend. And I did it in the first weekend, of course, the first guest posing I did in Florence, South Carolina. I did a split. The stage had oil on it. I slipped and I tore my groin muscle. And oh my God, what a pain in the neck that was. It swelled up. It turned black and blue. Somehow I was able to train still. I don't know how I did, but I had to travel every weekend with that thing, and it was all swelled up, and I had to wear like compression socks so I wouldn't get an infection. I think I got an infection in my lower calf because all that blood that was that dead blood kind of went down by gravity into my leg, and it was just a nightmare. And I wasn't even doing anything super dangerous. It was something I did all the time. I just didn't realize there was oil on the stage, and I slipped. So after that, I stopped doing dangerous or, you know, stuff in a routine that might cause, you know, injuries to myself. 'Cause who wants to get an injury? That's why when we made fun of Regan Grimes when he jumped off the roof of his house into the swimming pool, you know, luckily he didn't get hurt, but he could have gotten very hurt. You know, you can't do dangerous stuff like that. Look what happened when Colin Van Moger was rappelling off the side of a cliff, tore his patella tendon. It's very dangerous as a bodybuilder to do normal activities. You can't go rock climbing, you can't go skiing, you can't go skating and rollerblading like I mentioned earlier. You can't play basketball and softball and all these little seemingly innocuous things that are not going to hurt you or not going to hurt the normal person. A bodybuilder will get injured doing that. Probably the only safe thing is you could probably play golf. I don't think golf is golf, maybe bowling, but even bowling, I got news for you. You know, you get some overuse injuries, you know, or you can slip, but I think bowling and golf might be the extent of what you can do. Don't do dangerous, kooky, crazy things. If you really value your body and you want to be an elite level bodybuilder and compete at the elite level and not have to play catch up with guys because of freak injuries, stay safe. Look what happened to Branch Warren. Branch Warren slipped on some ice outside his house, tore his quad. Victor Martinez slipped also on a curb or something like that, tore his patella tendon. Those are injuries that are unavoidable, okay? And the funny thing is that most bodybuilders don't get hurt inside the gym. And the reason is because they're focused and they're concentrating. It's when we're outside the gym that we're not paying attention and we walk around, we look at a cell phone, we're just not paying, and that's when we trip on a curb and freak accidents happen. But there's nothing you can do about freak accidents, okay? They're gonna happen. But don't do high-risk activities. Think before you act. Don't jump off a stage that's, 10 feet in the air, because you're gonna get hurt, especially when you weigh 300 pounds. It's inevitable. Don't do crazy sports where you're going to get hurt just because all your friends from college or all your friends from high school are playing pickup football. Even if it's flag football, don't play because you're going to tear something in your quads. These guys have no muscle. They have very little muscle. They can bounce around and they're not going to get hurt as bad as you. You're going to get hurt, and it's going to affect your ability to train and potentially compete. So my rant today is think before you act. Be safe. Remember the wise words of wisdom that my father told me way back when I first started becoming involved in athletics. If you're going to be a great athlete, number one, expect to live with pain. He said, because you're going to be in pain. because you're going to get injuries, you're going to get, banged up a little bit, but don't do high-risk activities that are outside your sport because you will get hurt. Dave Palumbo with an RX Muscle Rant.